Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Today I'm going to make a prong setting for a trillion blue topaz that I have. I think it'll be pretty. I've not made one quite like this before. Before we do that though, I needed to thank some people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters. I have some new ones. I have Boats19 and Daniel Z. Thank you for signing up. I do really appreciate your support. I think you'll find that it's a really nice group of people over there with a nice community where you can get to know some of them and interact and show each other what you're working on. It's a great place over there, so thank you for that. Thank you to my previous patrons for all of your support. The other group is my YouTube subscribers, and we just passed 26,100, I believe, which is amazing. Thank you for that. Thank you for all the great comments and the input and the suggestions. I really do appreciate and value what you have to say. And it's nice that we have such an active comment community, so thanks for that. I do also appreciate your financial support, the Buy Me a Coffees, the Super Thanks, people who buy my merch or my ebooks. Those things really make my channel sustainable, and I couldn't do it without your help, so thank you for that. All right, well, let's see if we can't make this trillion prong setting. So this is one of my design idea sketchbooks that are available on my merch store. There's a number of different models. They have different information on the backs. This one has some information about different solder flow temperatures. Some of the other ones have conversion charts and ring sizing gauges and things like that. So there's some useful information on those. The key feature for me though is the stop matrix in the background. It helps me to draw better pictures, although I don't know if you can tell from that one. But it's a nice way to keep track of your projects. I've done so many projects now, it's hard to remember which ones, or how I did them, or even what I did. So this is what I was going to do today. I have this little, there's my little stone grabby thing. Okay, so I got this. This was my initial sketch. I think I'm going to go with the curved kind of look though, but this is a 6.5 millimeter blue topaz. It's Swiss blue, which is kind of that lighter color, and it's a trillion, and that means it's a rounded triangle. We're going to make a little prong setting hopefully, and then we're going to have this border going around it, and I think I'm going to make that out of 12 gauge square. I pre-made some of this band here because I wanted to see if I could do it, and I thought we'd have enough to work on over here. I just basically flattened out some 14 gauge square wire to about 0.91 millimeters thick. 14 gauge starts out at 1.6 millimeters, so it's significantly thinner in that dimension. And I hammered the top end a little bit to make it just a little wider, and then filed down the other end on each of these pieces, and then overlapped them and soldered them together. And this one connect on the other side. The head of the ring is going to go between these two. At least that's my plan. So it should be kind of a, I don't know what you'd call that, little curved pickets kind of going all the way around. I'm going to do 6 prongs, I think. And I think what I'll do for the setting is I'm going to make a piece of 16 gauge square wire into a little ring like this. And that's going to be the ring that goes between here. And I'm going to build prongs coming up off of that. We'll do a little bearing to be right underneath the stone, underneath the girdle there where you can't see it. And hopefully those little prongs will be attached right on the outside of that so we can set it really easily. And I thought I would solder this border to the outside of the prongs there. So that's my plan. I'm not sure if we'll be able to pull it off or not, but I'm going to give it a try. So I think let's make the little bearing for this first out of the 14 or 16 gauge square, which is 1.3 millimeters. The other things I'm using 18 gauge round for the prongs, that's 1 millimeter. 12 gauge square is 2 millimeters, although like I said I'm going to flatten it and file it probably like I did these things. And 16 gauge square, like I said, which is going to be the part right underneath the stone here, as well as the circle, which may be smaller than that. I haven't decided yet. We'll see. That is 1.3 millimeters. So I think let's see if we can make this little thing. So I think I'm gonna start in the middle of one of these sides here, because that usually produces a better result. If you try and do the solder joint on the corner when you have sharp corners like this, it's never exactly the same as the other two corners, so I find that to be not as good, personally. Let's find my little note file. Where did you go? I got a marker here. Let's kind of go about midway down. I'm going to make a mark right about there. Let's see if we can file a notch on the side of this wire just a little bit. Just a slight one. It will allow us to kind of bend it more sharply right at that spot. This is going to curve a little bit. I get an idea where I need to make the next bend right about there. So let's file a little notch in that too. Don't do that. So I've kind of overlapped it like this. That'll allow me to kind of see where I need to cut it. I think I've got the proportions pretty well on the sides. Sometimes I file a notch a little bit off and then I look at it and it looks crooked to me. I think we're okay on this one. Okay, so I'm going to cut this off just a skosh long so I can file it down a bit. You can check size by just setting the stone on top of it. I think that's pretty close. If I need to, I can file the outside edge just a little bit to make it perfect. But let's solder that closed. We need to solder not just where it comes together right here, but also on each of the corners with just a little tiny bit of solder. If you're interested in my soldering and torch setup, there's some information about it. Let's get this guy soldered. We'll be using a lot of little tiny pieces of solder on this one. This project's probably going to be more of an advanced project, so if you're new to this, you might want to hold off on doing something like this for a while. At least until you get a good handle on soldering. I do a lot of pick soldering, which is where I pick up a tiny bit of solder, heat the piece up to the flow temperature, and just touch it where it goes. And so if you're interested in that, there's a pretty good video there about it. It's one of those skills that kind of changed everything for me, honestly, as far as metalsmithing. Just allows really precise placement of solder, which is kind of nice. I think I already got that corner, but I'm just going to do a little bit more. Oops, come back here. Let's flip it over and make sure it's seam all the way through. I think it does. Now if you look at this, this is going to be kind of tapered inwards a little to this. It's going to be kind of flared outwards. So I think what I'm going to do, since these wires are going to be coming up on the outside of this, let's file it to where it's kind of angled inwards just a little bit, like right Something else I'm going to do is I'm going to taper the inside inwards so that the pavilion of the stone has a nice place to sit in there, and this will sit down a little bit lower. So I'm going to use my rotary tool with a ball burr to just kind of do that. It's kind of hard to keep this in focus when I'm just holding it up in the air, so I apologize if it's blurry at all. Since it's so small, I'm going to use my miter vice jig to kind of hold on to it. Hopefully that'll make it a little bit easier. So now I'm going to use my just half round needle file and clean those up a little bit. Then we'll see how it looks. So I got this kind of tapered down on the inside there. Let's throw that in there and see if I can pick it up. So you can kind of see how it's going to look. Really can't see, but it sits much down closer on the girdle there now. So then we're going to be putting prongs on here, 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 and here, kind of on just on the outside of each of the corners. And so I cut 3 of these pieces of 18 gauge round. And I honestly didn't really measure them. I kind of eyeballed how big I thought I'd need them, and they ended up being about 35 millimeters. So, 1.5 inches, I guess. And I found the center and I filed a little notch in it like we did earlier. So I want to make these into kind of like little V's. Kind of like that. See, I don't have it perfectly centered. I thought I did, but I was a little bit off. But that's okay. I think we have enough to work with here. So got them like that. I think what I'll do now is I'm going to solder the ends closed so they're a single solid joint there now instead of a filed notch. You know, we're using pretty small pieces of solder. We don't need too much. I'm going to be putting them into a softer surface like this magnesia block here. We'll poke them in there and we'll line them up at the top here so we get them all connected into a kind of a tripod shape, or a hexpod, I guess it would be, since we have six ends. A hex, is that a word? Hexpod? That doesn't look too bad. What do you say we try and solder those? I'm going to have a little extra solder there just in case I need to, but I suspect the solder that's already there will probably solder them all together. let's see if it worked. Alright, let's see if we can get that all soldered together. If you need to, you could use, medium or something paste solder. Probably would work. If I have a fail here, then I'll probably resort to that. Let's take a peek. See if things stayed straight up and down. You could actually use a little burr or something and carve a little notch on the inside of that to keep it straight, but I think we got it in there pretty good. So now we need to make a little ring out of some more of this 16 gauge square, I think. But I want it to be pretty small. And I honestly don't want this sticking up super high, so let's try making one and see how it looks. I'm going to sweat a little bit of solder around the inside of this thing. And I think I'm going to do what I did with the ball burr to kind of create a taper outwards on the inside. So I'll be back in a sec. You probably don't need to watch me do that, but I want this to, I'll cut this off, then we'll get those wires to fit in there nicely. And we'll see if this ring is big enough. It may not be. I cut a little bit bigger one because that other one was just a little bit too small, I think. And I cut off the bottoms here, pushed it into the pad, and pulled the ends into a nice, neat configuration close in. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to solder it on like that. Hopefully keep it pretty straight. But I think I'm going to use some hard paste solder. It'll just be easier to get it in there. And so let's put a little bit on the inside of this. I'm going to make sure that I have a connection on all of the prongs. Not sure this one does. A little bit more there. A little more there. Smoky. Alright, let's cool it off and take a peek at it. Okay, so I think that's probably done. We'll snip those off when we're ready, but we can solder this in. But we need to put that little decorative thing that I was going to create up here on top. So, I think I was going to use 12 gauge, but I might use 14. Let's try some of this and see how it looks. I have a little bit of this left. So just like I said before, I used my chasing hammer to kind of flare it out just a little bit. Let's do this. Let's cut it off. Right there. Be pretty close to the right length. Just like before, I'm going to file this and taper it down just a skosh. Sometimes using the miter vise jig in a non-standard use like this, just to hold something while you file it, is useful. Okay, so let me make a little bit more of that square wire. I'll be right back. I'm not sure how we're going to solder this, but it may be easiest if we push this down flat in there again. Try and get it as straight as possible. That's kind of what I was visualizing. So I'm going to try and get them soldered to the posts first. I'm going to use some of that. I think I'm going to use some medium solder, so nothing shifts on us. So let's pull that out and take a peek at it. Let's see how it turns out. I'm going to go rinse this off better since it's got little bits of pad on here. Be right back. I think that's rather attractive, honestly. I'll trim it up to where they're a little bit shorter. And we'll see about putting it on the band. Getting the band back together. I'm going to clean that up on the outside edge with a Dremel here so I don't have too many oxides, and let's solder it to that band. Set up the third hand where neither thing can really fall out, hopefully. Let's shift a little bit. Graceful. Let's put a little more easy on this side just to make sure. I'm going to trim off this stuff on the bottom here. Alright, I'm going to clean that up and pickle it and see how it looks. So I got things polished up and cleaned up, and I cut these a little bit shorter. Not as short as they're going to be when I'm trimming them off at the very end, but I'm going to go ahead and push them down so they're holding that stone in there snugly. I usually use my chain nose pliers to do that. Just kind of lay them down like that. I don't want to get too overzealous at this stage, but I usually cut them off about midway up the girdle facets. So about like that. And then I'll taper it down with the Dremel and shape the prong to be whatever kind of prong I want it to be. And after I get them shaped, I will push them down one last time and smooth them out with a blue silicone polishing wheel. And then we'll get some pictures. So, interesting ring. Very sort of, I don't know what we'd call that. Maybe mid-century modern, sort of. I don't know. You tell me what you think. But I'm going to get this finished up and I'll get some pictures. Okay, well that was a Trillion prong setting ring with a kind of border thing. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you go. That really helps to get my channel promoted. And I would love it if you'd go over to my main channel page. I have 670 plus videos now. I do 3 per week, and I've been doing it for about 4 years now, so there's a ton of content there. Lots of project ideas, some techniques, and all different skill levels. So I think you'll almost certainly find something else useful there. So check it out. Subscribe to my channel. There's no cost for that, and I'd love to have you as a follower. So make sure to hit that button too. Finally, don't forget to hit the video description down below. There's some important links down there. There's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about that nice community. There's multiple tiers of membership there. The lowest being just getting rid of the YouTube ads. Some of the other ones having perks like exclusive video tutorials, some live streams, and other things like that. So check it out. It's a great place. There's a link to my merch store if you want to get yourself one of those nice design idea sketchbooks or some other merch. I find those to be really valuable and a great way to keep track of your projects from the past. There's also a link to my ebook. My newest one is 2025. It has a page for each of the videos that I did in 2025 with a picture of the project, a picture of the sketch I did beforehand, a list of materials you need to make it, difficulty rating, stone information if there's a stone in it, and some notes that I made about it, including things like, would I do it differently? What did I learn from this project? Or did I think it was a good outcome or not? And how might I change it if that's the case? So lots of great information, a ton of projects right at your fingertips, and a super nice way to support my channel. So get yourself one of those. You can also get the other 2 years that I've done them for, 2023 and 2024. There's a package deal for all 3 of them for, I think you get $15 off if you get all 3 of them. So there's also various different bundles of 2. So check it out, and thanks again for coming today. I hope you have a nice weekend. Take care. Happy silversmithing.